Tonight's scripture will be coming from Numbers chapter 13, verses 30 through 33. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature." Then we saw the giants. The descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight.
I determined last week as I began to look at my plan for this lesson series that I've got to go faster. I really bogged down and slowed down there in the 10 plagues and getting us to Sinai, and we've got to definitely go faster than that. So we're going to cover a whole lot more than we have in the past couple of weeks as we continue to walk through the Bible and look at the Exodus tonight from Sinai to the Promised Land. You know, we came to Sinai last week, and the Israelites came there, and they camped before Mount Sinai. And God offers them a great opportunity. And we're going to see, of course, most of you probably already know, they're not going to take the opportunity that God gives to them. And so many people have the great opportunity of the gospel of Jesus Christ offered to them today. And just like the Israelites, they turn it away as well. Listen to what God says. He says, "Now then, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my commandment, you shall be my own possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel." What an incredible offer that God gives to them. "I'll make you mine. The whole earth belongs to me. I will take care of you. You will be blessed above everyone else in this world." You know, the people promised to obey Him. But God, knowing the hearts of these men, God knowing all things, knew that it was not a promise that they would keep. In fact, it wasn't even a promise that they keep very long. You know, sometimes people promise and they hold on for a while, right? These people aren't even going to do that very well. God descended upon the mountain in fire and smoke and flashes of lightning. The mountain quaked violently, and there was an ongoing sound as of a trumpet blowing there at Mount Sinai. And God spoke the 10 Commandments. I think sometimes we think that the first time that the 10 Commandments are found out is on the tablets, but that's not the case. God spoke the 10 Commandments to the people, and the people begged God to not speak to them anymore. You know, I think people need to realize that coming into the presence of God is something that is life-changing. I mean, even coming into the presence of some kind of representation of God, as we see in Isaiah chapter 6, has a profound effect upon the people that experience it. Daniel became physically ill as a result of those interactions with God and those visions that he had in the book of Daniel. And the people said, "We don't want God to speak to us directly anymore lest we die. Just talk to Moses. Let him tell us what you have to say." Well, Moses went up on the mountain and was there for 40 days. And I told you they weren't going to keep the promise long, didn't I? While he's on the mountain, the people pressured Aaron to make them a golden calf right there in the shadow of this mountain that is smoking, that has lightning and thunder and violent shaking. Right there in the shadow of that mountain, they pressure Aaron to make for themselves a god. Can you imagine that? To make them a golden calf, and Aaron yields to that pressure, and he does it. It is amazing how men will turn on God even in the face of what He has done. I mean, these are the people that just 50 days earlier were walking through walls of water at the Red Sea, that have seen the 10 plagues. And yet, here they are, in the very presence of God as He's on the mountain. And they are building a golden calf that they may worship. God's reaction is one of my favorite interactions in the Bible. God, all this time, has been saying, let my people go. And He tells Moses, your people are down there doing this. There was a change. Not my people. Your people, Moses. And God tells Moses that He's going to kill them all. And that He will keep His promises through him. And I don't think we should ever be under any kind of illusion that Moses somehow was able to talk God out of something that he had decided to do. I think God gave Moses an opportunity here to be what God wanted him to be, and that is someone who intercedes on behalf of the people. He is the foreshadowing of Jesus. Moses says that God will raise up a prophet like unto him, and this is one aspect of Jesus as our intercessory. And he intercedes with God on behalf of the people, and God relents from his decision or from what he had said that he would do to the people. And Moses is going down the mountain to deal with it himself, and he comes to Joshua, who is partially down the mountain, but is there nearer to him than anyone else. And Joshua says, sounds like war in the camp. And Moses said, it ain't war. It's about to be, right? But it's not right at the moment. Something far worse than war. We know the story of him breaking the 10 Commandments. He destroys the golden calf. He grinds it up. He puts it in their drinking water and forces them to drink it. He rallied the Levites. Who's on the Lord's side, he said. And he rallies the Levites, and they go from end to end, gate to gate of the camp, killing everyone they come across. And 3,000 died on that day. A foreshadowing of the 3,000 that would live on the day of Pentecost. After returning to the mountain for 40 days, Moses, in replacing the commandments, Moses' face shined so bright that they put a veil on it. Being in the presence of the glory of God. For that time period had that kind of an impact on Moses in a physical way. I don't understand that. I wouldn't begin to try to explain that, but that is the case of what happened. Moses built the tabernacle and all the furnishings as God had commanded him. The Bible God repeatedly admonishes him, you make sure you do it exactly as I say. People today who don't think God cares about how they worship haven't read the Exodus, have they? You be sure you do it like I said to do it. You be sure that things are done and activities that take place there take place in the manner in which I have commanded. It isn't long after that point, after the priesthood of Aaron is established and the tabernacle is built, that we see that God does care about our worship and does care about us doing it the way that He says to do it. When Nadab and Abihu take fire from some place other than where God had said to take fire. And it says that fire came from the presence of the Lord and burned them up. It might mean that it came from the Holy of Holies and burnt them from there. Well, the Israelites, after building the tabernacle, after establishing the priesthood of Aaron there and the worship that would take place there with the tabernacle. Tabernacle was basically a large tent. It was made to move. They packed it up. And they left Mount Sinai. You know, they didn't go very far into the wilderness after they left Sinai. They began to complain about the manna, the food that they have to do nothing for other than bend over and pick it up, right? And they actually have the gall and audacity to say, we had better food and a lot more food when we were back in Egypt. Can you imagine that? What a slap in the face to God that is, as He cares for them, takes care of, provides for them. And they go, well, we had it better when we were slaves, when we were being beaten, when we were being killed, when we were being forced to labor all day long. It was better then. So God sends, at that time, quail. And literally, if you take and you do the the breakdown of the measurements given as far as the gathering of the quail, you could literally say that the people went out and they were gathering wagon loads of quail and just eating it in a greedily way, just coming out of their teeth, the Bible says. I mean, they're just being greedy. I mean, you almost get this idea from what God does and how God reacts to this, that they don't care about each other, they just care about themselves and getting all that they can get. God reacts against that. Tells at that particular time it caused a plague to kill many of them. And He said, I did it because of your greediness. Because you took that food and you just acted like, there was no thanks for it. It was just give me all I can get. Well, Aaron and Miriam around this time as well are upset at Moses. They're upset at Moses' marriage to a Cushite woman. Josephus says that Moses married a Cushite woman before he married Zipporah, and when he was still in the first 40 years of his life in Egypt. But they're not happy about that. And they come to Moses and they talk in a manner in which they basically say, we're just as good as you, Moses. And God begs to differ. God said, I talk to prophets in a lot of different ways, in visions, in other ways. But He said, unlike anybody else, I talk to Moses face to face. You are not his equal. God establishing very clearly who was in charge among Aaron and Miriam. And from a family standpoint, Aaron is the older brother. Miriam is the older sister. But Moses is the boss. And that's decreed by God. And as a result of Miriam's leaving her proper place, she is struck with leprosy for a time and then healed. Well, they get all the way up to the land of Canaan. We're about a year in now from the time that they've been delivered from the Egyptians, and they get to the land of promise. They get to the border of the land of promise, and they decide to send 12 spies in to spy out the whole land. And this was no small spying expedition. This was from one end to the other. So this probably took some time for these men to travel and to look and to check out the land. And they come back. We have the song, don't we, that we sing at VBS? 10 saw bad, 2 saw good, right? I think I got that right. Remember that song? 10 of the spies said, oh, it's terrible. We read it just a moment ago. We were like grasshoppers in our own eyes. I mean, this is how they viewed themselves as they looked at these people. There's no way we can take this land. And yet Caleb and Joshua stood up and they said, we can take it. We need to go in. The Bible says that they went out, and of course they're telling everybody these things, and that the people sat in their tent doorways and cried. Oh, I can't believe we come here. I can't believe God brought us here. We should have stayed in Egypt. And folks, it got so bad that they chose another leader. They chose another leader to take them back to Egypt. God said, that's not going to happen. And they said just one time too many to God that He had brought them out there to die. And He said, you are going to die. You're right. Every one of you. Now they realize they've messed up. You ever have that happen with your kids? You're telling them to do something, they're back talking you or whatever. And of course now in my house, I'm going to tell you how it was when I was a kid. When I was doing it, the coming out of the belt. You ever heard that sound? You know that sound? Anybody know that sound besides me? When Dad's pulling the belt out and it's whacking the loops as it comes through. Well, suddenly I decided I was going to do it. Right? Oh, yeah, I got it. I wasn't going to do it just a moment ago, but I'm doing it now. But that was always too late. Right? I still got the spanking. And then I still had to do it, so it didn't really matter. But, that was too late once I decided to do it after the punishment was coming down. Now God gives the punishment, and they go, okay, we're ready. Let's go into the land of Israel. And God said, no, you can't go in. You're not allowed to go into the land of Canaan. Don't go. And still disobeying God, they go. And the Amorites and the people of the land defeat them soundly and run them back out of the land. So now they're going to spend 40 years. 40 years dying in the wilderness. And the only people over the age of 20 that left Egypt that was numbered after they came out of the Red Sea are going to be Joshua and Caleb that enter into the land of Canaan. That's it. 2 million at least people. And only 2 out of that left as adults are going to know what it is like to live in the land of Canaan. Well, not long after this, there was a rebellion. You can imagine that there's still a lot of hard feelings among the people as they travel along, and they decide that they're going to rebel. And the rebellion is led by a man named Korah. And many believe that Korah may have been the leader that they had chosen originally to take them back to Egypt. And so he's kind of stayed in that role. He's kind of continued to be this de facto guy that's the opposition to Moses, but pretty much in all things. And now it kind of comes out into the open. And there's open rebellion and disrespect toward Moses as God's leader. We know from the text that most of the Israelites sided with Korah. So if it was a democracy, I could tell you that Moses was done. But it's not a democracy. And just like Aaron and Miriam had to learn who was the boss as God had designated it, now the children of Israel need to learn it as well. Moses proposed a test to show God's chosen priesthood. They were not only against Moses, they also wanted to get rid of Aaron. Korah was of the tribe of Levi. Therefore, he felt like he could be the high priest, but that was not the way that God had determined it. And he said that they would take a test to show God's chosen priest, that they would attempt to offer incense. Aaron would attempt, and Korah got himself 250 followers to bring their censers, the things that they would burn, the pans that they would burn their incense in, there and burn incense there at the tabernacle. And at the time that was to happen, and the time that they were preparing to do that, the earth just straight up opened up and swallowed Korah and all of his men that were leading with him, swallowed them up and closed up on them. And fire came out of the altar of God there at the tabernacle and burned up all of Korah's followers that had come there to offer incense. Boy, you would think, if you saw the earth open up and just swallow people up, you would think if you saw fire jump out and kill 250 people, that you'd get in line, right? No. These people go to Moses and Aaron and they go, "You have killed God's people." Can you imagine that? How deranged a mindset that is? If Moses actually had the power to do what just happened, that's the last guy you want to go up to and smart off to, right? Go up against. You've killed God's people. God began killing them en masse. Right there in front of Aaron and Moses. And Aaron, I think there's a part of us that thinks, when we think about how people mistreat us and how these people were mistreating Moses and Aaron, and they were wanting to kill them, they were wanting to stone them. Let's just go all the way to where the mindsets that were going on right here. They wanted to get rid of Aaron and Moses. They start dropping dead. There's a lot of people in this world that would just stand there and go, "Yep, getting what you deserve. I'll just wait here until y'all are all on the ground, and then we'll go on." That's not the kind of men they were. Aaron takes his censer and he runs out in the middle of the people and he makes intercession. He stands there in the middle of them. And everybody on one side of him dies and everybody on the other side of him lives, being that foreshadowing of the life that Jesus is. But he was that high priest making intercession to God for the people, begging God not to kill them. And those on one side died and the other side lived. Well, that seems to have quelled the rebellion among the people on that particular day. But they continued their wandering. They wandered for 40 years in the wilderness as that punishment. And over the course of those 40 years, hundreds of thousands of them died as they went through that wilderness. And all that were numbered in the census at Sinai would be dead by the end of those 4 decades. In the 40th year of their wandering, a number of things happened. Miriam died. Moses' sister, that sister that goes all the way back to following him along the Nile River as a baby. A woman who was greatly admired and loved among the Israelite people. She dies there at the beginning of that 40th year. Moses, and it may be very possible that as you think about what's going on with him, with Miriam dying and things, we come to that point where the people are once again grumbling, complaining, never happy, never satisfied with what God has done for them. And Moses goes out and God has said to him to speak to the rock. They wanted water. And Moses, for the first time, seems to kind of lose his self-control. And he strikes the rock. God said to him, "You did not treat me as holy." When we don't do what God says, then we don't treat Him as holy. And Moses joined the group that would never enter in to the land of Canaan. I think there's a lesson to us in regard to how God feels about our disregarding what He says. Does anybody besides me think it's a pretty small thing to strike a rock instead of speaking to it? He didn't kill anybody. He didn't commit immorality. He didn't do anything to hurt someone. He struck a rock. You think that's really important? God does. Because it's what He said. And that makes it important on a level that is far above anything that we can know and understand. And it shows just how important every single thing that God wants us to do and to be. It's important that we do those things and be those things. To show Him holy. Shortly after that, Aaron died as well. The Edomites then did not allow them to go through their land. I mean, you think about it. You got these millions of people out there, and they're going, "Hey, can we come through your land?" No, really don't want your 600,000 men of war age to come through our territory, right? Y'all just go around. Well, that took them out into an area of land that easily gets to 120 degrees, and the people, of course, began to complain again, began to grumble. And God sent serpents among them with a fiery venom. And many of them died because of the bites that ensued from those serpents. And they complained to God, and God had Moses build that bronze serpent, right? And all they had to do is look when they were bitten, and they would live. It amazes me as we go forward into the future, that would eventually become a pagan item that would have to be destroyed because the people were worshiping that instead of the God that commanded it to be built. We have the story of Balaam and his talking donkey. I'm not going to get into that story. How he was supposed to curse them, but he kept blessing them. Bless his heart, I guess we could say, right? But the Midianites then sought to destroy the Israelites. And I think one thing we leave out about the Balaam story is what became of Balaam. Balaam wasn't an Israelite. But God wanted him to bless them. He never was going to let him curse them. And he did that which God said to do. But let's not forget that when the Midianites came and they said, "How do we destroy the Israelites?" It was Balaam's advice where he said, "You have to make their God mad at them." And they set forth an effort to commit immorality with the Israelites, with their women. And there is an instance that's recorded that a Simeonite came in with a Midianite woman, and he goes to his tent, and they are committing immorality. And Phinehas, the son of Aaron, is outraged that no one else seems to care about what's going on right there in the camp. And he takes a spear and he goes in the tent and he rams it through both of them, killing them both. And God said, "That is what I want. People who care about what I say." Penalty for that was death anyway, according to God's law. And so they waged war, Phinehas did, and wiped out the Midianites as God had commanded him to do. But in that war, when you look at the people that were killed, one name comes to the top. That Balaam was killed as a result of what he had done against God's people. We also see that at that same time, that same immorality, mentioned later by Paul to the Corinthians, that same immorality, God, for the sin of immorality, it's something that I think we've almost become desensitized to in our world today. God killed 24,000 Israelites in one day because of the sexual immorality that had taken place. God hasn't changed, folks. He's still bothered. He still has to get angry about these things. And we ought to be thankful, right, that He doesn't react as He did in that day for what might happen to our nation and to places in our world. Well, Moses has an opportunity, even though he's not going to enter the land of Canaan. God gives him opportunity to go up on the top of Mount Nebo and to view the land. He can see all the way to the Sea of Galilee, all the way down to the southern parts of that region, and you can do that. It's kind of amazing. The land's not nearly as big as we sometimes think it is, and from high points you can see a long way. And he was able to see the land that he had spent these 40 years leading this obstinate people to get to and to enter. And after that, Moses dies. I don't know about y'all, but I think it's kind of a neat distinction of all that Moses was. That he's the only person that it's recorded that God buried him. Isn't that interesting? I'll take that. I'd be glad for God to handle that situation for me, right? God buried Moses in an undisclosed place, a place that was never known. But that shows the relationship that God had with that man. Remember what He told Miriam, what He told Aaron. I don't speak to anybody like I speak to Moses. We talk face to face. God had a relationship with this man. And those last words, that last act, is an act of friendship. You know, when one of our loved ones dies, when people that we know die, we go to the cemetery, do we not? So that we can be there for that burial. Because they mean something to us. And I think there's that same thing shown here with God and Moses. Well, Moses had already picked his successor, and his successor was Joshua. And we'll pick up there next week with Joshua and enter the land of Canaan and get into the judges that would come after that time of conquering the land, or the lack of conquering the land, actually. But God is going to get His people there. He promised it. And with all their obstinance, with all their unfaithfulness, with all that they did to disregard God, He kept His promise to them. All that opposition, God does what He says. You know, there's going to be times in our lives when we are in opposition to God. There's going to be times in our lives when we're just like the Israelites. Folks, never forget that God will do what He says, and whether that's applicable to our punishment one day because we don't do what God says, or whether it is the great promises that He's offered, if we will. Oh, what did they give up when they didn't keep their promise to obey God? They gave up a lot. And a lot of them gave up their lives and their souls for it. May we not be those people. This evening, if you're not living as you should, if you're not, hearing those promises of God and doing those things that He has commanded, then don't let that go another day. Make that right before God and receive the promises that He has given to those that have promised to be His, and then follow through on it. If we can help you with that, we hope and pray that you will let us as we stand, as we sing.